My specific job is supervising sound editor and in some cases co-supervising sound editor. And I'm kind of usually responsible for all the dialogue editing, all the ADR, sort of all the words. And then in some cases I work with Eugene Garrity, who's more the sound designer, comes up with sound effects. I think to excel in sound editing, mostly you just have to want to do it, and you really have to be able to collaborate. Our job essentially is to try to get the director, to try to help the director achieve his or her vision. It's mostly important to realize that most directors are thrilled if you come up with something that they didn't think of or wouldn't have thought of, but primarily you're there to serve the film and to help tell the story the best way you can. Usually I will send a script primarily to help do budgeting with the film, because if the film has a budget, which some don't have much of one, it's helpful to see on paper what you might be faced with, maybe get some ideas of what might need to be recorded, how long it might take to do the job, and also just to get a feel for the film. Generally, as a film is being shot and edited, we'll get called upon to simply furnish sound effects, or occasionally if there's a particularly bad sounding dialogue scene, to do a little bit of work on it and maybe mix it a little bit and then give stuff back to the editor to use in their process for screenings. And then at a certain point when the film is relatively close to being locked, they'll turn over the film and we'll start the process of working on the dialogue and the sound effects and all the other pieces. And that's usually a 8 to 10 week process. Then we'll go into the dubbing stage, into the mix, for anywhere from 3 to 8 or 10 weeks, again depending on the size of the film. And then we eventually make a print master and then do an international track without the dialogue, and we're sort of the last ones usually on the process. Good sound editing, to me, depends completely on the type of film that you're watching and listening to. If it's an action movie, then there can be a temptation to just keep piling on one sound after another, and eventually it just becomes a cacophony. There's no detail anymore. I think an action film benefits by having very specific sounds that are good and clear and do the job, and then get out of that one and move on into the next one. If it's an emotional scene and suddenly there's a jet going by overhead, it might sort of take you out of the scene. So I think on some films less is more. And on a narrative film, I think if you're not aware of the sound at all and yet you're feeling all the emotion involved, then the sound editor did a good job. A film that did inspire me, and this was after I'd long been a sound editor, was Terminator 2, because it's an action film. It doesn't become this big wash of sound, and the music complemented the sound effects and vice versa. And that, to me, was a very good example of what could have just been a lot of noise, but was very detailed. Scorsese was in LA for many years, and he came back and wanted to come back and work in New York, and he was sort of looking for a New York-based sound team. I worked with a partner named Skip Livesay for several years, and he did a film called After Hours, which was the first film that Marty did in New York after coming back. And I think he was very pleased with the job, and I started working with Skip a little bit after that, and I guess my first Scorsese job was a Michael Jackson video, Bad, and that was about 1986. And since then I've just kind of worked on everything, and Skip moved to Los Angeles, so wasn't really available to continue, so I sort of kept it up and continued after he left. I have a very good relationship with Marty. We love to make each other laugh, so I'm sort of the class clown on the mixed stage. I keep him happy. He keeps us happy. He's a very charming man, very funny. He is very specific about what he wants. It's very there's very little question whether he likes something or he doesn't. He won't stop until it's the way he wants it to be. Yet there's a lot of room, even in those places, but certainly throughout the rest of the film, to just experiment and do what you want, and he's always willing to listen to something. One of the greatest challenges on Hugo in terms of the dialogue and the production sound was there's steam everywhere. All through the train station, you see steam shooting out of every vent or coming up through the floor or down from the ceiling. All of those sequences were very noisy with the steam itself and the machines that made the steam. There were lots of challenges for the production sound mixer to try to cleanly mic the actors, and that became my challenge because Marty Scorsese and Thelma Schoonmaker, the editor, it's all about the emotion of the scene. Technically, they do care, but they don't get bogged down in, is this like a perfectly pure take? If a take is the one that they want, it has the right sound. They don't care if a wrench falls and clangs on the floor. It's more about getting the right emotional quality from the scene. So a lot of time and effort was put into trying to get clean up the production sound, to get rid of the steam as much as possible. There were several microphones used in each scene, radio mics and boom mics, and normally I try to use a boom mic track and then sort of embellish it with the radio mic only for the voice itself, and then kind of weave in and out of that. But in this case, the boom tracks were so noisy in most cases that we just had to use a radio mic, which means picking up crackle and move whenever anybody moves. So it was a real challenge just to try to clean up the tracks and get everything heard and get everything to poke through. The additional sounds that take place in scenes where radio mics were used or things where the dialogue was replaced, everything has to be added in. But that's kind of the case for everything all the time anyway, because eventually you have to have an international track where the English dialogue is removed and it's dubbed in one of many languages. So in pretty much everything you see on the screen, you have to have a sound for eventually, whether you're using the production dialogue sounds or not. My favorite sequence in Hugo was one that I did very little work on myself, but my partner Eugene Garrity did a great job, and that's sort of the dream sequence with the train. Hugo jumps down on the track to try to pick up a key, and then the train's coming towards him and eventually goes off the track and goes barreling through the station and out the window. That's a good example, I think, of what I was talking about before, which is having a lot of stuff going on and hitting kind of one detail at a time and having it build and build but not sound like a mush of every sound you've ever heard coming in at you all at the same time.
There's a boy on the track! Get out of the way! There's a boy! Break the thing! Turn it off! Get out of the way, man! Look! Alex!
think that's probably my favorite sequence in that film.